He came back from the hunt, but he wasn't the same man anymore. 3 full days passed, and not a single word left his mouth. The village thought he was cursed, or broken by something in the mountains no one was meant to see. But on the 4th day, when the elders finally forced him to speak, he looked up with shaking eyes and said something that froze everyone in place. It wasn't an animal, and it wasn't alone. From that moment, nothing in their world stayed normal again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling content like this. Let's now move towards the story, so let's begin. He leaves the village early in the morning, confident and focused, carrying only his bow, knife, and the experience of a hunter who knows the mountains like his own breath. The settlement is quiet as he departs, and nothing suggests this will be anything other than a normal hunt. Hours pass as expected, but when the sun disappears behind the horizon, he does not return. At first, the absence is not alarming because he has survived longer hunts before, and the land around them is unforgiving but familiar to him. As the first night settles in, the villagers assume he has gone deeper into the mountains in pursuit of game or chosen to wait until morning to return. His reputation gives comfort to those waiting. However, by the 2nd day, the mood begins to shift. Small conversations turn serious. People start checking the paths leading into the wilderness. Even though Apache hunters are known for their endurance and independence, the delay begins to feel unusual. Still, there is hesitation to send search parties because experienced hunters are often offended by unnecessary interference. By the 3rd day, uncertainty turns into concern. The village can no longer ignore his absence. Then, without warning, he returns. But his return is not like any return they have ever seen. He does not come back with the pride or relief of a successful hunt. Instead, he walks slowly, almost mechanically, as if each step costs him effort. His clothes are torn and covered in dust. Scratches mark his hands and arms, but it is his face that unsettles everyone the most. His eyes do not focus on anyone. It is as if he is physically present but mentally somewhere far away, trapped in something no one can see. People rush toward him, calling his name, asking what happened, where he went, what he saw, but he does not respond. There is no anger, no confusion, only silence. Even when his family reaches him, expecting comfort or explanation, he avoids eye contact and steps away as if human voices mean nothing to him anymore. He sits near the fire later, but does not eat properly. He refuses water at first, not out of defiance, but as if basic survival itself has lost meaning for him. The silence becomes heavier than words. It spreads through the village, creating discomfort that no one can explain. This is not the behavior of a normal hunter returning from the wild. Something is clearly wrong, but no one can identify what it is. The elders begin to observe him closely. What they notice is not just silence but something deeper beneath it. Fear. Not the loud kind of fear that causes panic, but a controlled, buried fear that sits inside a man and does not leave even when danger is gone. It is the kind of fear that stays in the eyes, in the posture, in the way a person reacts to small sounds. Whispers begin among the villagers. Some believe he crossed into forbidden territory. Others think he encountered something spiritual in the mountains, something that cannot be spoken about without consequence. A few suggest that the journey broke his mind completely. None of these explanations feel complete, but no one has a better answer. Over the next 3 days, his condition does not change. He barely sleeps, and when he does, he wakes suddenly as if reacting to something invisible. His silence is not empty, it feels guarded, like he is holding something back. The tension in the village grows stronger with each passing moment. By the 4th day, the elders come to a decision. Silence can no longer be allowed to continue. Whatever happened in those mountains must be spoken aloud, because now it feels like the silence itself is carrying danger back into the village. The 4th day arrives with an unusual heaviness in the air, as if the village itself is waiting for something to break. The hunter still sits apart from everyone, avoiding conversation, avoiding even simple acknowledgement. His silence is no longer seen as confusion or shock alone, it has become something the entire settlement can feel. People speak in low voices, and even routine tasks slow down, as if noise itself might disturb whatever is trapped inside him. The elders gather again near the central fire. This time their discussion is more serious, more urgent. They no longer treat his condition as temporary or emotional. In their eyes, Silence after such an event is no longer just personal suffering, it is a danger to the entire community. In their tradition, a hunter carries knowledge back from the land, and withholding it disrupts balance. Something that is not spoken cannot be understood, and something not understood can become a threat. They decide he must be brought before them. When they call him, he does not resist. He rises slowly, almost too calmly, and follows them as if he already knows what is going to happen. His movements are controlled but empty, like a man walking without fully being inside his own body. The villagers watch from a distance as he is led to the center of the gathering place. The fire burns steadily, but the light feels weaker than usual. Elders form a circle around him, creating a space where truth is expected to surface. No one speaks for a moment. Even the wind seems quieter. The chief elder finally breaks the silence, reminding him of who he is and what he represents. He speaks about responsibility, about the connection between the hunter and the people. His voice is firm but not harsh, as if he is trying to reach whatever part of the man is still listening. He asks him directly to speak of the mountains, to explain what happened during those 3 missing days. The hunter does not respond. Another elder tries a different approach. Softer. More personal. He asks if he is injured, if he is in pain, if something frightened him so deeply that words have become impossible. Still, there is no answer. Only a faint shift in his breathing, as if even hearing the questions pulls him back into something unpleasant. The silence begins to affect those watching. Younger villagers grow restless, uncomfortable with the lack of explanation. Some begin to feel frustration, interpreting his silence as disrespect or defiance. But the elders do not see rebellion. They see something far more troubling: disconnection. As if the hunter is no longer fully part of their world. Small signs begin to appear. His hands tremble slightly when certain sounds break the quiet. A sudden bird call makes him flinch. A crack from the fire causes him to pause longer than normal. It is as if invisible triggers are pulling him back into something only he can see. The elders realize that forcing him to speak through pressure will not work. So they shift to something older, something deeper. They prepare a sacred council circle, a traditional setting used only when truth must be drawn out through presence rather than force. The fire is lowered. The night is allowed to settle fully. Everyone takes their place in silence. The hunter is seated in the center. For a long time, nothing happens. The silence stretches until it feels unnatural, almost physical. Then one of the elders speaks again, not as command, but as invitation, telling him that what is carried in silence does not disappear, it only grows heavier. He tells him that if he saw danger, it must be shared. If he faced something unknown, it must be released into words before it consumes him completely. The hunter finally reacts. A slow breath. A slight movement of his head. His eyes, which had been lowered for days, begin to lift for the first time. And in that moment, everyone understands something has changed. He is no longer resisting the truth. He is preparing to speak it. His first breath feels different, deep, uneven, like it is being pulled out of him rather than taken willingly. The circle around him tightens in attention. No one interrupts. Even the fire seems to flicker more slowly, as if waiting. When he finally speaks, his voice is rough and broken, as though it has not been used for days. At first, the words are not a story but fragments, short, disconnected pieces that take time to form meaning. He explains that the hunt began normally, like any other. He followed tracks deep into the mountains, confident and focused. But something about the trail felt unusual. The movement of the animal he was tracking did not feel natural. It did not run in fear. It did not behave like prey. It seemed aware. That detail alone changes the atmosphere in the circle. He continues, slower now, as if each memory is pulling him backward. He describes how the animal would stop at strange intervals, sometimes disappearing entirely, only to reappear further ahead. At first, he thought it was skillful survival behavior. But then he noticed something unsettling. It was not escaping him. It was guiding him. The elders exchange silent looks, but no one speaks. He says that by the first night, the forest began to feel different. Not in appearance alone, but in presence. Sounds were not normal. The wind carried patterns that felt too structured, too repeated. There were moments when he heard movement around him, but every time he turned, there was nothing there. Not silence exactly, but something that felt controlled. Then he stops for a moment, struggling to continue. His hands clench slightly as if remembering something painful. He explains that after a while, he stopped following the animal. But that is when the feeling changed. It was no longer about tracking prey. It became clear that something else had begun tracking him. He describes the sensation as being watched constantly, not from one direction, but from everywhere at once. Even when he closed his eyes, the feeling did not disappear. By the second day, he realized he was no longer navigating the mountains normally. Paths seemed to shift. Landmarks no longer matched his memory. He tried to return, but every direction felt wrong. It was as if the forest had rearranged itself around him, making escape impossible. The villagers lean in closer. Some look uneasy. Others look afraid to even blink. He says he tried to remain calm, tried to rely on experience, but the land no longer responded in a familiar way. Time itself began to feel unstable. Moments felt repeated. Sounds felt delayed. It was as if reality was no longer fixed. Then his voice drops lower. He says that on the second night, he realized he was not alone in the forest. Something was present near him, but not visible in a normal way. He could feel it in the air, in the silence between sounds, in the way the darkness felt heavier in certain places. It did not approach him like an animal would. It simply existed nearby, waiting. He pauses again, longer this time. His breathing becomes uneven. It is clear that what comes next is harder to say than anything before. He finally speaks the line that breaks the entire circle into silence. He says that when he tried to sleep, he woke up to something standing beyond the firelight, not clearly formed, not fully visible, but undeniably there. Not an animal. Not a man. Something that did not move like either. And it was watching him without blinking. At that moment, no one asks questions anymore. Because everyone understands the story has left the world they know, and entered something they do not. The firelight seems weaker as he continues, as if even it is reacting to what is being spoken. The hunter no longer looks at the elders while he talks. His gaze stays fixed somewhere between memory and fear, like he is watching the scene unfold again in front of him. He explains that after seeing it near the firelight, he did not sleep properly again. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt something shift in the darkness around him. Not movement in the physical sense, but awareness, like the forest itself had become conscious of him. He began to lose track of how much time was passing. Day and night started blending, and his sense of direction weakened further. He tried to leave the area, but each attempt led him back to unfamiliar ground. The forest no longer behaved like a place meant to be crossed. It felt more like something that was holding him in position, observing what he would do next. He describes moments where he would walk for hours only to realize he had returned near the same ridge again, as if unseen paths were folding him back. The villagers remain silent, but their expressions grow heavier with each sentence. Even the younger ones who were doubtful earlier now listen without interruption. He says the turning point came on the third day. By then, exhaustion had taken over his body, but something else had taken over the environment. He no longer felt like he was simply lost. He felt contained. The forest no longer felt vast, it felt structured, like an enclosed space pretending to be endless. He describes finding strange arrangements in the terrain. Broken branches placed in patterns that were too deliberate to be natural. Stones aligned in ways that did not match erosion or animal movement. Even footprints appeared at times, but they were wrong, similar to human steps, yet inconsistent in spacing and depth, as if whatever made them was not fully grounded in the earth. The hunter stops for a moment, swallowing hard before continuing. He says he reached a clearing that felt completely wrong the moment he entered it. There were no sounds, no wind, no insects. It was not peaceful silence, it was enforced silence. Even his breathing felt loud to him. The space felt like it was holding him in place. Then he describes something he struggles to explain even now. He says the air itself felt distorted, like reality was slightly misaligned. Shapes in the distance were not stable. Shadows did not behave correctly. It was not something he could point to directly, but something he could feel pressing against his senses. He attempted to defend himself. He raised his bow and fired an arrow into the clearing, aiming at what he thought might be movement. But nothing reacted. There was no impact, no sound, no confirmation that anything had happened. It was as if the action itself had been swallowed by the space. That is when fear stopped being controlled. He ran. But running did not feel normal either. The terrain seemed to resist him, not physically but perceptually. Distances felt longer than they should be. Paths that should have led downhill seemed to loop back upward. His body became exhausted faster than expected, as if time itself was working against him. Eventually, he collapsed near a river. He remembers lying there with no sense of direction left, unsure if he was still in the same world he had entered the hunt in. After that, his memory becomes unclear. He does not remember the full return. Only fragments, walking without knowing how, waking up far from where he fell, and eventually reaching the village without understanding how the journey ended. When he finishes speaking this part, he falls silent again. But this silence is different from before. It is not resistance anymore. It is emptiness left behind after something too large has been spoken. The circle remains frozen after his words end. No one speaks immediately. Even the fire feels distant now, as if the warmth has been separated from the meaning of what was just revealed. The hunter sits still, head lowered, as though everything he carried has finally been placed outside of him. The elders exchange slow, silent looks. There is no rush to respond, because what has been shared does not fit easily into explanation or judgment. It sits somewhere between warning and burden, something that cannot simply be accepted or denied without consequence. Finally, the chief elder speaks, but his voice is different now, lower, careful, as if he is choosing each word to avoid disturbing something unseen. He does not question the hunter's truth. Instead, he acknowledges the weight of it. He says that not everything encountered in the world belongs to what humans are meant to understand. Some places exist beyond the balance of known life, where even experienced hunters are not simply visitors, but participants in something larger and unknown. He does not name what the hunter saw. He does not attempt to define it. Instead, he focuses on what must be done now. The council quietly agrees that the hunting grounds in that direction will be avoided. Not as punishment, not as superstition alone, but as caution born from uncertainty. Paths are to be changed. Expeditions forbidden. The mountains are no longer discussed as resources, but as territory that demands distance. The hunter is released from the center of the circle, but he does not return to normal life. Something about him remains altered. Even though he has spoken, the relief others expected does not appear. He moves differently now, slower, more detached, as if part of him is still listening to something no one else can hear. Days pass, but the village does not return fully to normal. The story spreads quietly among those who heard it, becoming part of local memory, repeated in low voices but never exaggerated. People avoid the direction of the mountains more often now, even when they do not speak about why. The hunter himself avoids the wilderness completely. He no longer joins hunts. He no longer walks the paths that once defined his life. At times, he sits alone near the edge of the village, staring toward the distant mountains without expression, as if waiting for something that never fully left. And sometimes, when the wind moves through the trees at night, he reacts before anyone else does. Not in fear, but in recognition, as if something out there is still aware of him. The village never receives a final answer about what exactly was in those mountains. There is no proof, no object brought back, no clear explanation that can be passed down as fact. Only the hunter's account, and the change it leaves behind. And in the end, that is what remains most unsettling. Because everyone agrees on one thing quietly, even if they never say it aloud again. Whatever he encountered in those mountains did not end when he left them. It followed him back in a way that words could never fully contain.